the School Board Candidate Forum. Our board is hosting that tonight. I'm presiding for our president, Veronica Villegas, whose son went into emergency appendectomy this afternoon. So fortunately, Veronica's very organized, and the whole team is here. So we proceed forward, and I'll preside to welcome everybody. I'd like to introduce just briefly, you don't need to stand, our Council of PTA boards that's here tonight: Scott Nishimura, Chris Savage, Tiffany Rogers, Derek Barnell, and Ed Hall. These are all volunteers of the board that we help the PTAs in our district. It's a completely volunteer board. The superintendent sits on it. I know designee Jennifer Perez, she's here tonight. Just as PTAs have their principals sit on their boards. And we provide connectivity to the district and to Texas PTA up and down, grassroots up and down through those organizations. I want to start by thanking the FWISD for allowing us to hold this forum here tonight at this board building, and for the technical support we've had and their gracious help. And we'd also like to thank the candidates from District 2 and from 5 and from District 6 for being here tonight. And many thanks to Mr. Harrell for presiding as moderator of tonight's event. Although tonight's forum is purely a question format and not a debate, the answers will be strictly timed. We therefore ask your courtesy and quietness during the responses and holding any applause, if any, until the screen shows black indicating the answer period is finished. And before we begin, though, I'd like to share a little information about PTA. PTA is a parent-teacher association. It's one of the oldest child advocacy organizations in this country, over 100 years old. And this particular council here in Fort Worth is over 100 years old as well. Advocacy is really what we're about, child advocacy. PTA's mission is to make every child's potential a reality by engaging and empowering families and communities to advocate for all children. And tonight, we continue that tradition by providing a candidate forum to provide the community with information to make informed decisions and the candidates an opportunity to be heard by voters. It's important to know that while PTA can take a stand on issues and principles, we are strictly nonpartisan associated. We cannot endorse candidates or parties. We may, however, hold candidate forums and also lobby legislatures on positions that are agreed upon by Texas PTA consensus. We are a Congress of PTAs in each state, and then we're a Congress of PTAs at the national level. The basic principles involving the welfare of children and youth are a matter of public concern, and therefore PTA business. The election for these school board seats will take place on May 9, and the early voting starts on April 27, and it goes to May 5th. And now let me introduce to you Mr. Paul Harrell, a longtime Fort Worth journalist and formerly of the Star-Telegram, and now editor emeritus of the Fort Worth Magazine. Mr. Harrell will describe the evening's format, procedures, and introduce the candidates for all three contested school board trustee elections. Thank you.
Okay, this is kind of backward here, but I guess I can live with it. I brought my cell phone because I want you to turn yours off, or at least silence them, please. My name is Paul Harrell, and I am delighted to serve as a moderator this evening. I want to tell you a little bit about the forum and to set some ground rules. As Deborah said, this is a nonpartisan forum intended to provide the community with an opportunity to learn about the candidates in the contested races on the place of the Fort Worth ISD School Board, and hear where they stand on the issues important to the Fort Worth ISD Council of PTAs. A total of 4 seats on the board are up for election. No, that's from last year. A total of 3 seats on the board are up for election. The candidates are seated alphabetically by district. The first question will go to the first person on the right, Joel, have the first question, and then they will rotate down until they've finished with that question, and then we'll move the start down one person and follow that same order. They'll start with a 1-minute statement, introduction of themselves, and then we'll go into the questions. Questions, they have 2 minutes to answer each question, At the conclusion of this, they'll have 2 minutes to make a personal statement. You'll see that there are, on the screens, you'll notice that what happens is we're using traffic signal colors. When they start to answer a question, the candidate starts to answer a question, it will go green. It will stay green until 30 seconds is left, and it will go to yellow, and then it goes to red. At the point of red, the candidate may finish the sentence that he or she started, but then they need to stop. We have 5 questions prepared by the PTA Council. Candidates have not seen these questions in advance. And audience members, please refrain from applauding too loudly or clapping or making loud or distracting noises. All questions to the candidates will be directed to them by me. If you need to exit the auditorium, go through the doors to this side over here. Restrooms are located just outside the boardroom to the right as you exit. Now, let me introduce the candidates. Candidates in District 2, East Side. Joel Aguilar, Sultan Cole, Toby Jackson. Candidates in District 5, that's South and Southwest and Tanglewood area, are Linda LeBeau. And I need to tell you that Judy Needham is ill and was unable to attend tonight. Candidates in District 6, that's for South and Southwest, are Cecilia Spear and Ann Sutherland.
Mr. Harrell?
Yes.
May I change chairs? This chair kind of deflated on me and I feel like a bit of
What is shorter?
Yeah, you're a little shrunk down. Thank you very much, Toby.
Good evening. My name is Joel Aguilar and I'm a candidate for District 2. I do want to thank the council for the invitation to speak this evening. For the past 16 years as a teacher and administrator, I have dedicated my life to serving, supporting, and leading efforts to greatly improve the educational opportunities for our students and the community at large. I proudly served 4 years in the Fort Worth ISD at the elementary level as an assistant and a principal, and I do completely understand the needs of our students. I entered this race because of what Dr. King called the fierce urgency of now. Our students don't have the luxury of time to wait. For our district to debate a plan, it's really time to take action. I want to make sure that I can contribute so that we can move our district towards a more transparent and accountable institution that focuses on teaching and learning. The time is now to move beyond the present stagnant state of our district and embrace new leadership with better results.
Mr. Cole.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you again to the Council of PTAs for inviting me out this evening to introduce myself and to share with this illustrious crowd of concerned citizens the reason why I am pursuing the office of School Board Trustee District 2. Again, my name is Sultan Cole. I am running for School Board District 2 seat. I come to bring 10 years of experience in developing and directing community programs and events that specifically benefit the parents and the students in Fort Worth ISD, East Fort Worth in particular. I come with also more than 20 years of experience in engineering and business management, and am able to assist in the board in creating greater fiscal responsibility with this experience. I'm also a facilitator of a free literacy program. As a matter of fact, $450,000 program that's completely free to the district that we developed more than 3 years ago. Okay. 2 minutes is fast.
2 minutes goes in a hurry.
That was only 1 minute.
1 minute, yeah, 1 minute. Ms. Jackson.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the PTA first and foremost, but I'd like to thank each of you that are in this room tonight. So many of you that I've seen frequently, thank you for your support of public education. We all know that it takes a village, and you are part of our village. My name is Toby Jackson. I am the District 2 trustee, and when I ran 5 years ago in 2010 for my first term, which I'm completing now, what I found were schools that were in failure. And what we've done in the last 5 years is converted those schools. 3 years into my term, I lost 12 schools, or 9 schools, picked up 12 schools. So I went from 12 schools to 15 schools, but only retained 3 of the schools. We ended up with 10 elementaries, 50% were failing. Today, 80% of those schools had met and even exceeded standard. But that's not good enough, and that's why I'm running for my second term. I want to convert all of the schools in District 2 and move that model throughout the district with intentional community partnerships. Thank you.
And thank you. Ms. Woodlaw?
I want to thank everyone for the opportunity to be here, the council of PTAs, and all of you that have bothered to come out tonight. I'm going to be short and sweet. I don't like the way the district spends money on $400 an hour attorneys when those resources can go into a classroom. Education happens in a classroom, not a courtroom. And that's what we have to get back to. We have to provide the resources to the teachers and be creative in our ideas in where we are going to correct the underperforming schools and how we're going to support our teachers in accomplishing that. Thank you for the opportunity.
Ms. Spear?
Thank you, the PTA board. We appreciate the opportunity to come and speak in front of you tonight. I'm Cecilia Spear, and I'm a former Fort Worth ISD parent, a Fort Worth ISD teacher, and a Fort Worth ISD chief of operations. As a former parent, I will advocate for and represent parents. As a former teacher at David K. Sellers, J.T. Stevens, and Alice Carlson, I will advocate for and represent parents and students. As a former Fort Worth ISD Chief of Operations and School Security, I will advocate for the efficiency of student safety and security. I spent 39 years with Fort Worth ISD, and I'm ready to sit at the other side of the table, and I'm ready to work. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sutherland?
Thank you, Mr. Harrell, and thank you to the PTA and Mrs. Niall for your sponsoring of this. When I asked for your support during the last campaign, I promised to work for you, that I would be in your schools, answer your phone calls, and attend your celebrations. Using my experience as a budget analyst, I would work to place as many dollars in the classrooms as possible, rather than building up the central administration. Parents and teachers advise me regularly through my kitchen cabinet. I also maintain an active blog on my website, Sutherland for Schools, where anyone can learn of major issues facing our community. Readers also ask questions, which I answer, sometimes by our staff. They view tens of thousands of pages every month, and they appreciate the service. Now I ask for your support for one last term. I will continue the same work I have begun, when which has borne some rich rewards for our children.
Thank you. We're going to proceed to questions, but I'll go ahead and bring the first one up, and I want to confirm that everyone can see it. Everyone can see it? Mr. Agon.
I think that the one single priority that I would tackle on the board would kind of be more of the autonomy of the schools. I think at this point we've had more of a top-down approach from central administration. And I think some of those decisions need to really go back to the local communities, the local schools. While it may not be necessarily something to pass, but I think it will be a policy change where we turn the central administration into a support role, where they come in and ask, well, how can we help and what can we do? Instead of bringing basically their plan of how they want to run the school. We basically have taken the creativity of the teachers away. We have taken the leadership of our administrators, and I think it's time that we move that back in. And so we have to kind of have a different mindset of the way we're going to tackle it. Whether that's policy, what it might be, then we have to change policy and the way governance is done. And so that would be a top priority.
Thank you. Mr. Cole.
Thank you. In In District 2, I do believe that there is a greater need for individualized support to meet the educational needs of our students. That would require prioritizing some infrastructure for our teachers through training and support. To a point that's already been made, I do believe that individualized curriculums, development of curriculums, would allow for that creativity for teachers to be able to meet the pressing needs, educational needs of our students. So supporting teachers in the classroom and allowing their voices to be heard would certainly be one of my top priorities. I also support curriculum that best meets the educational needs of students in the classroom. In particular, let me give you an example. When our students are tested, one side of town, in reading in particular, the scores may be a 45% differential, which goes to say that maybe a standardized way of teaching in terms of the curriculum may not necessarily be a good fit for one demographic versus the other based upon those educational needs that need to be met with those students. So I would be a strong proponent of training our teachers, making sure that they are equipped to be able to present a curriculum that meets the specific needs of our students and thus improving the overall health, educational health of our students. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. We have several challenges that roll into one thing, and that's student achievement. So the number one issue we have is student achievement. That can be directed in 3 different manners. That is by giving some campuses autonomy, by looking at ways to decrease student mobility, and most importantly, increasing teacher input. That concludes my answer.
Thank you. Mrs. Love.
I'm going to change the subject. I think what we need to do is to hire a strong superintendent with a backbone who will come in here and say, I am going to evaluate central administration, salary structures, job performance, job description, and the people who are not earning their salaries or are working hard not to work or haven't performed well, they are going to be, they're gone. And board, you can fire me anytime you want to, but this is what I'm going to have to do to make this a district that will be providing the things that my colleagues up here have mentioned, allowing those resources to get to the classroom. That is the most important thing I can see we can do at this time.
Thank you. Ms. Spear.
My goal would be for all of our students that graduate high school to have those that are college bound to be prepared for the future of college, but those who have a skill or that need to go into other areas, that they have a skill that they could go into, whether it be as cosmetology or auto mechanics. But I think that we need to prepare our students when they leave high school to either go on the path of going into a job market or going on to college. And hopefully that we can offer enough programs in our schools to attract the students to choose what they choose to do, whether it be the college route or the route of going and having training to fit the need of a position. I feel it's very important that we prepare them for what will they need to do in the future.
Thank you. Ms. Sunderland.
Yes. When I first started following the school board in 2009, preparatory to running in 2010, I had 25 years in the classroom behind me, plus 13 years as policy analyst with the state legislature, 2 years as a college professor at the University of Oregon in educational policy and budgeting, and some other assorted experience. I've brought those skills to bear on the situation that we have in Fort Worth, which is not a pretty one. Between the time I moved to Texas in 2004 and 2009, when I began watching the school board, our student performance scores sank from next to the top of Texas urban districts to next to the bottom. It is no secret the reason that this happened. The reason is because we have a one-size-fits-all curriculum, and all teachers are required to follow it. In order to make sure that teachers follow it, a huge testing schedule has been imposed upon the teachers, taking precious hours away from classroom time and relegating our classrooms to factories rather than places where young minds are nourished and appreciated. This year, believe it or not, we actually increased our testing run by requiring tests every 3 weeks. And it is, by the way, very clear to me that this is illegal, but no one seems to mind. I pushed for 6 months to get this off and finally threatened to go to court. And finally they put it on the agenda, and just before the meeting started, a memo was sent out saying that it would no longer be required in most of our schools. This is the kind of action that is needed in order to improve our schools. It takes a stout heart and a lot of guts and a lot of questions before you're going to get any result. I want to continue this, and I hope you will support me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. On the next 4 questions, they're pretty complicated, so what I'm going to do is read them out loud as well as the first. I'll read the first one out loud. It gives you a little bit of time to think about it. School funding is a continuing issue before the Texas legislature with repeated efforts to provide vouchers for private schools and struggles to adequately fund public education. Assume for a moment that these issues starve the Fort Worth ISD. How would you propose dealing with that scenario? And Mr. Cole, you're first up.
That would be a very difficult situation to face, considering the fact that maybe our school system is underfunded. However, from a management and budgetary perspective, especially with the responsibilities of a trustee, the fiduciary responsibilities, we would certainly have to go back and look at our $650 million budget and assess the programs that are working effectively. We'd also have to look at staffing and ensure that we have the right staffing in place to make sure and to ensure that certainly we don't allow the students to suffer by decreasing teacher staff, making sure that that's in place. But for those who have been in our district, whether it be administrative, if there are positions that can be combined to save in the indirect cost of staffing, then certainly that's something that we need to look at. Also, another area that we need to look at as well is how we generate money through property taxes, things of that nature. We have to assess that as well. What are the areas where we can generate more money for the district to be able to offset any loss in revenue or income to support the overall funding of our district? So again, that's a very difficult question, but I do believe, scenario, but I do believe in transparency, making sure that the public is fully aware of the areas that we're considering, maybe making some changes in our budgets, making some changes in terms of departments, maybe some consolidation is needed. Maybe there's some more considerations that we need to make in terms of some of the improvements that we make, projects that we have on the board right now as it stands, especially with the bond. Maybe those projects need to be delayed in order for us to be able to get our fiscal house back in order. So thank you.
Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. This is a great question, and it's good news in Fort Worth, Texas, because our 143 schools have 13 high schools with programs of choice. We're already front-loaded with the VPA and the STEM Academy, with a STEAM TCC South campus that's coming on as an early college, with Marine Creek Early College. So we can compete with any charter and any private school. How do you fund it? How do you fund it if vouchers come into play? One thing is you do, 1% right now that we increase tuition is $5.5 million on a population of 87,000 students. So we need to look at, and I've already brought this up to the board, tuition, look at attendance reimbursement on campus. So we need to incentivize that. That's one way. We have a $660 million a year budget. I've never advocated for any property tax increases, and I would not advocate for that. The way that we compete against charter schools and the way that we compete against private schools is to have programs of choice where we can actually utilize the language in House Bill 5, which says students have to be career and college ready. So I think this is a great question. I think that vouchers, if they do come into play, I'm personally not a fan of them, but if they do come into play, Fort Worth ISD is prepared to compete with them. We're front loaded. Thank you.
Ms. LeBeau.
Well, I'm the contrarian. I'm going to say, write your local legislator. I do not think vouchers for, to go to private schools or to take existing public schools that have been built with public money to then take money away from our public school system is the route to take. We can be more creative than by allowing our taxpayer dollars to be going to some other place other than our own public schools. I'm sorry, I am watching the ledge. I don't know if anyone in central administration is watching the ledge right now, but there are several bills that are in play. And one would be for a petition for parents that are unhappy with an underperforming school to take the school and create it as a charter school. If charter schools aren't vetted, and we know several in the area, or at least one of notoriety, that went belly up because of a variety of reasons, but they're usually financial. They aren't vetted well, their financing is unstable, and then for us to give our taxpayer dollars in a voucher to allow that to happen, we better become better aware of what our legislature is doing and let our representatives know that we are paying attention. That's our civic duty, and something that we should be talking to each other and to our teachers and principals about. So I'm baffled as to how could tell you tonight how I would solve the problem. Presented with it, I'd find a fix, but I'm saying I don't like it. I don't like this idea. Thank you.
Ms. Spear.
Thank you. First, I would think that our district would work with the other large districts throughout the state, which we have a consortium that we work with to, number one, increase the per pupil funding. And all the other districts that are large urban districts like ours have the very same problems that we have with the per pupil funding not being quite what we need it to be. And I think that we have always worked on that. I think it would continue to be something that we would work with these legislatures and others to continue to do that. And I think we don't have many charter schools in Fort Worth, and I think the reason we don't have those is because that our schools, as Ms. Jackson said earlier, all of our high schools have Gold Seal programs. So we can look at different high schools and look at the programs that we offer. We have high academic offerings in many of these schools, as well as other trades that are offered in these schools. So this past year alone, we gained 1,500 students from private schools. So that tells me that what we are doing is something right, because the students are coming back to our schools to get an education rather to remain in a private school. So I think Fort Worth has something to be proud of there. But those are some of the things that I would do.
Thank you. And Mrs. Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. First of all, I would like to point out a couple things. Judge Dietz, who is in charge of the school finance case, which is now before the legislature, has already determined that there is not enough funding to be constitutionally sufficient. The state constitution requires sufficient funding for real education to exist, and he has already announced that we do not have enough. So I do not think that unless they change judges, that we are going to be in this situation. I know that's not the question, but I just had to throw it in. Secondly, he he also announced that the funding is not equitable across districts. They're going to obviously work with the Robin Hood portion of that. So you may know this already, but Fort Worth is $500 per student behind in the weighted average daily attendance behind its sister city, Austin. And I do not think that we would suffer in any contraction. We did, however, suffer 2 or 3 years ago when we didn't have enough money. Some of you may remember that we passed, I forget the word, but we passed a thing saying that we're really in a lot of trouble and we had hiring freezes. And during that time, we increased class size district-wide by 2 students. We took I want you to listen to this, okay? We took $25 million out of our classrooms at that time, and we put it in the central office. I'm gonna say it again. We took $25 million and put it in the central office. We now have 550 people in our curriculum and instruction. I would take those out right away. There's more than 550, there's more than enough money there to work on it. And so that doesn't give you an entire answer, but it certainly gives you a start. The answer is there's too much money in the central office and they're starving the classroom. One more small thing. I don't know if I mentioned this in my last question, but I calculated we spend $40 million a year on in-service training. Most of the teachers tell you that's not worth it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Oh, I'm sorry. I was going to blow you up one.
Obviously, this is not what we want for public schools, because we do have strong public schools. I think with the budget we can get very crafty, because I know that we come up with solutions even for non-classroom items. So I think that as a board we could work towards making sure that we take care of our students, we take care of our classrooms. But we have to make ourselves marketable, very marketable, because if one other item that hasn't been discussed too within is the ratings that the legislature is trying to put on schools, the A through F. So when parents are looking at schools and now you're going to have the stigma on the school based on just a particular test, then that's not going to help us there. So we have to make ourselves marketable, and that's where we need to improve instruction. We need to make sure that we go back to that teaching and learning, and so that way we can improve. So, and that starts with the strong governance. It starts the strong governance, the leadership that trickles down to the schools. Talk about community partnerships, businesses. They want the great workers to come out of our schools. So then they also need to step up kind of to the plate in terms of how they want things to be, also in how they want the city to be. We are a strong city with a strong economic outlook. And so when this type of situation happens, I cannot see them just sitting back and thinking, well, we're going to go and compete with other schools or other districts. I think they just need to be looking at us. And so that's, we do have an infrastructure here with the schools of choice and the gold seals. And that's where also the marketable part comes, because we need to show exactly what we're doing. When we look at results from colleges where 50% of our students are not even meeting a 2.0 GPA, that doesn't help us either. So we need to make sure that we get back to making sure that those areas are strong before we can, obviously look at the budget. We can handle the budget at the board level, but we need to take care of what happens down at the local level.
Thank you. Question 3. Given that the role of the school board trustee is to set district policy and supervise the superintendent of the district, do you think that district student assessment and testing practices are a policy issue requiring school board action, or an operational issue that should be left to the discretion of the superintendent? And please explain your answer. And I guess we'll start with you, Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell, and please don't forget Mr. Cole. Testing is a national problem, but it doesn't seem to be an international problem. It's a U.S. problem. And we are a governance board. We set policy. We hire a superintendent, and they manage a staff to determine testing. And it is not this board's job, but it is our job to question when testing is excessive. And it is our job to ask the superintendent to look into things and provide us data and support for what they do. So my answer is, we don't make the decision on testing, but we certainly can write policy to govern testing. It is still up to the superintendent, because at the end of the day, who's held responsible for those scores? The superintendent. Thank you.
It'll be your hard act to follow.
Ms. McGuire.
I don't think I can disagree with anything she had to say. How about that? I agree in terms of the responsibility being at the superintendent's feet with regard to testing issues, and but I do believe the board needs to step up in oversight of what happens through central administration and be more interactive in how they see their role as public servants and as oversight to central administration. I hate to say me too, but I share Ann's concerns with the testing issues that we've recently confronted, and I'm glad to hear tonight that those have been resolved to some degree. I'm not at all about believing education is teaching to the test. I want to say that if you have a third grader who isn't reading, doing basic skills by math and reading, writing by third grade, and you've done everything at home to help raise that educational interest in the child, then you need to be consulting with your school and asking, why are my child's basic skills not in place by third grade? So it's more about getting the basic schools under their belt and not about taking tests, as far as I'm concerned, with the kind of education we need to be delivering at Fort Worth ISD.
Thank you. Spear.
I believe that the board's position is to set policy, but I believe when a board and a superintendent together work on making the determination of what they feel is necessary for the district, but you can't tie the superintendent's feet and not let them go forward with the program. But when superintendents and the board work together to set the values and the things that they think are important and look at that and make sure that our policy follows that, I believe then there could be some accord in doing that. But I do feel like that certainly it is the superintendent's call.
Ms. Sutherland.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. As you will not be surprised to hear, I have strong opinions about this. When Mr. Dansby became superintendent, first thing he did was to do a curriculum audit. It was, I've forgotten how many pages, but between my fingers it was about this thick. It was very thick. Fortunately, they had the executive summary, which was about 15 pages, all in one place, which of course I took out and devoured. And the first thing it said, number one, it said the board is not running the district. The board must take control of the district. And it went into some detail, which I can't reproduce out of my head right now. It's very clear to me at that time that the board was not representing the district, was not running the district. The board responded to that by adopting a procedure proposed by the superintendent that, I should probably say the superintendent's staff, because I don't know that Mr. Dansby wasn't really on top of this one. It said that the board delegates to staff the responsibility for setting the policies of the district and with respect to testing and other things. So basically the board wasn't doing its job, and when it was told it wasn't doing its job, it said, no, we're not gonna do our job, we're gonna give it to the staff. This is actually a fact, okay? You can find it in the minutes. The board must take control of things. I have actually some hope on that. I'm gonna use this piece of my comments right now. I have been very discouraged, as have several other board members, about the pace of our things. And in addition, it seems like there was much hope, but we do have some hope. I only have a few minutes left, a few seconds left. There have been several things that have happened in the last 6 months that have given me hope. And if we continue to have strong board members, it will grow. If we don't, it's not going to grow, and the district will continue to wither and die. Thank you.
Thank
I agree that the board sets the policy, and the superintendent is basically charged with following the policy, but then creating those programs or those administrative regulations that are needed for the governance of the rest of the district at the local campus and so forth. But we can't forget oversight and accountability, and I think that's what we've forgotten for a long time. We fire principals, we move teachers, we fire teachers, we move everybody else around, but central admin does not. So when do we hold them accountable for it? So I think that's when the board in itself has to come back and look at it. So if we have a set structure, a real structure, the district implemented the continuous improvement model, but we have not seen that. When you have specific structures for everyone that they are to follow, then you can say, here you go, here are the parameters where you're working in, go ahead and go and govern and do what is best for students. But at this time, we don't have that. We have a fragmented organization, that you have too many people doing so many different things, and no one really knows exactly where we're headed in terms of a direction. We have experts in the classroom. Why do we hire specialists? Why do we hire so many people? And yet, whatever is said at the very top is what goes, regardless of the expertise of any of the individuals. So we have to really look back. Are we hiring the people to do what? What are they there for? And so that's where we have to also look and show us the plan and show us the data. We hear too many good presentations at the board level, but we never see the data. Look at the Metro situation. Research says that was the best move, but no one says, based on this is why we made the decision. Show us the information that goes behind it. As a principal, that's what I'm tasked for. I can't just say this is what I'm gonna do, and I have nothing to back it. So it has to happen at the board level as well. Yes, set the policy, but have oversight and ask the questions. You can't just leave it to chance that we know everything's gonna work.
Certainly, I do agree that it is the responsibility of the board to set the district policy, but it's also the responsibility of the board to ensure that we have a superintendent that's hired and in place. So far, we have spent nearly $750,000 in order to get that accomplished, and we need to have someone in place immediately to be able to execute the policy, execute this plan. That needs to be developed quickly so that way our district can move forward. Now, in terms of the responsibility of the superintendent, I do believe it's the responsibility of the superintendent as well as their administrative staff to ensure that testing practices, the assessments are in place. I believe that there needs to be an assessment in place by the school board to bring the superintendent back on a month-to-month basis to assess exactly how well our district is doing. Until we get to a place of healthiness, I believe that we can move from a month-to-month reevaluation to maybe a quarterly evaluation. But certainly, again, it's incumbent upon the fact that we have a superintendent that is in place, that we've hired, that we make sure that we vetted the right person to be able to lead this district. We talk about our schools of choice. I would like to see our district become the district of choice, and I certainly believe that we're in a position for that to happen. Thank you very much.
We often hear about the Fort Worth Way working collaboratively to solve community issues. Yet the school board continues to struggle with factions on the board and animosity among members. What can you personally do to change the tone of the board? And we'll start with you, Ms.
Well, my response to that is, what can I personally do to change the tone of the board? I think what I can do is suggest that we have some team building expert come in here and help rebuild relationships and create stronger and healthier relationships amongst board members. There's certainly a great need for that. If you've looked at my background, I'm a mediator, facilitator. I had a contract with TEA going all over the state mediating disputes, and I understand what it takes to resolve issues when trust is lost or someone is perceived to have been wronged. But I think we need to wipe the slate clean once we get a sitting board after this election and everyone needs to come down to earth and realize that we have a tough road ahead of us. I know I've got a steep learning curve once I get elected, and I hope I can have your vote. But it's something I'm willing to take on, and what I will have to do to get up to speed to someone with the experience of Ann or Toby. But I think there needs to be a process that board members undertake. Oh, I have 30 minutes, 30, no, okay, thank you very much.
Thank you. Ms. Spear.
I think what we've read about many times, what we've read about many times is sort of like a soap opera behind the doors for our board meeting with our trustees. I think that disagreeing and bringing different visions is very important. I don't think there's one way is the right way. I think we have to all work together. But I think we can do that respectfully with our with the other individuals on the board, and can do it without being destructive. I think we need to restore the focus, number one, about why we're here, and the focus needs to be on our children. And if we stop with our personal agendas or whatever we have and put our focus where the children are and what we need to do to make things happen for our children, I think that would help a lot. But I do think that we have the board now has a little bit of a reputation of not being able to work well with others, and I think we can do that. I would be able to do that, to work collaboratively as I did when I was a district employee, working with many different agencies and people to work for the good of our students. And I think that our board needs to focus. Thank you.
Thank you. Sutherland.
Yes, thank you. I find it necessary at this point to have a little lesson. It's not what I came for, but it's important. The problem with the Fort Worth School Board is that we are at sea. We have no staff. We have no one to listen to except the superintendent and senior management. Dallas, for example, has 8 staff members that support the board. We have 2 secretaries. There is no way for anyone on the board to get information except by asking questions or by finding an additional source of support somewhere else, except to listen to the management. Over time, this has resulted in management feeling that they are in charge of everything. And in fact, the reason they feel that way is because they are. Just today, by the way, I found out that one of our management people went to Austin and made a position on a bill that the board has never taken, and with which I do not agree, and I do not think the rest of the board agrees. It is unthinkable to me that a staff member would go down to Austin without checking with the board. Just unthinkable. So that is the reason for this situation. It's not about people having adverse things. What happens is that people eventually, the district gets in such a bad way that you begin to elect people who want to reform things, and then there becomes conflict. And eventually the conflict will result in either the district dying or there being changes that won't make it function right. I would like to point out that I always think people are talking to me about me, but I would like to point out that I was elected unanimously to be the secretary of this board, that I sign all the checks, probably $800 million worth of checks a year. And that's a pretty big responsibility. And I work with everybody on vote. If you want to say, we don't even have sides anymore. We have different things that are important to different people. And I think it's going pretty well. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Aguilar.
I think we would talk about a soap opera as kind of an understatement, just to the way that we see the board act. When we're professionals, we're elected officials, we've been entrusted to represent a constituency, but yet we can't even get that done at this level. I think we have a model. We have the Baldrige model. I've worked under that model myself as a principal, and we have everything in place, but for some reason we just can't get a hold of it and really have someone to lead it, because we always have the forward way. That's with any program, anything that has come to this district has been the forward way. We've never had a program that has been dealt with fidelity. I can tell you that with the dual language program. It never was. The reason why we do not improve is because we do not do it the way it should be, because we have too many people making the decisions and not allowing the experts in the classroom to do it. We need to understand our role. What is our role as a trustee? We need to go back to the basics about how it is that we're supposed to sit up here and really do our job. We need to stop the secrecy. We need to communicate to our constituents about what is happening as to the reason why we are doing things. But we have too many behind the door deals, and all we get is a final vote at the end, and no one says anything, and then we're supposed to basically live with it. And so that really has to, you have to turn around all that is happening and go out to the community and build that trust. When have you as a community have seen many of your members come out and really talk to you and tell you what it is that is needed from you? So when we look at that, obviously we need to come back as a board and start over, kind of like say, okay, this is what we need to do, obviously with student achievement. But it can't happen unless we have those conversations, since right now no one's really having the conversation. It's basically just pointing fingers. And that has to really stop. And get back to teaching and learning. That's the priority. That's the reason why we're elected. That's the reason why you're here. As a principal, that's why I'm here. To basically make sure that students get the best opportunity. Basically, we have a great district, but we need to show that it is a great district.
Thank you very much. Mr. Cole.
Thank you. Yes, I was fortunate to be a part of that 3-day workshop as Mr. Dansby and his staff presented the Baldridge model for singleness of purpose. The results of that, if we want to call that a collaborative effort, being the forward way, then certainly that's the best way, because every stakeholder in this city was downtown at the Worthington being involved in that entire process. And I applaud the administrative staff at that time for bringing together such a great group of people to accomplish such a great feat that I think that we need to continue to implement. But let me also just read to you very simply, because the question is, how can we collaborate and best reset the tone of the school board trustees? First of all, if you go back to our standard of practices, it says this here: because of the special trust associated with governing the Fort Worth ISD, members of the Board of Education commit to working together to achieve success in order to provide outstanding leadership and better serve the children of our community. Number one in particular, it says this here: all of our decisions will be based upon what is good for children and what will benefit the children. That needs to be our main priority as sitting trustees. Number 6 says we will respect the leadership and roles of the board president or presiding officer, superintendent, and will support them in the efforts to lead the board and the district. We must make sure that we apply and stand by these standards of practice. 7, our relationships with each other will be based upon courtesy, trust, and respect. We will have a governance team, follow the practice of issuing praise in public and providing criticism in private. And then number 8, although we may disagree on issues, we will listen for understanding, respect the other's ideas, and be united when final decisions are made. I'm just proud to say that I have a master's degree in executive leadership, and will be able to apply all of those things that I've learned to ensure that the Board of Trustees here in Fort Worth ISD will live by these standards of practice that we've set before this board. Thank you.
Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. The question was truly, what can I do? And this is what I do every time I walk in here. I check my ego at the door. The number one thing I look at is teamwork. And that's what we have to do. Because you can have polar opposite opinions over here and over here, but you can meet in the middle. If we all agree up here, you get to a level of this, you're mediocre. But if you disagree with respect, you can get to a pinnacle of success. And that's what we need to do. This is a uniform body. It's a governing body of one. So when we leave the room, we have to agree, even if it's a 5-4 vote, we have to uphold that. And that's what I do as a trustee. The most important thing is to treat each other with respect. In the past 5 years, we've had 3 superintendents in this district. That's challenging. In the past 5 years, 55% of these trustees have turned over in these seats 4 people have remained in those 5 years. In the past 2 years, 33% of these seats turned over. That causes a board to need time to learn to work together. And I can tell you that this board is on track to do that, and I will be thrilled to be here to see that happen. But I think that the public's been patient enough, and it's time for the board to get it together, and I am more than happy to lead that effort. Thank you.
Given the fact that the most recent search for a superintendent ended in disaster, those of you who are elected will have the opportunity to select the next leader of the school district. What's the single most important attribute the superintendent should possess, and why? We're going to do this.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. I believe that we need to look for a superintendent that has experience, that has a proven track record to show that there have been gains in student learning and achievement. One that has worked with a city much like ours and with a district with our configuration that is willing to come here and to take us to the next level. And we can't do that with someone that has not proven themselves in another district that has had that experience. I think it's very important to find a person with integrity and that is ready to lead this district into the next step, because I think we're ready to be there. I think this district has worked well among all the factions that have been against it. We just need one person to help pull it forward and the board to help support it, to be behind it, and I think we can get there. But we must have one that has a vision for this district that we can support and he has a proven track record. Or she, excuse me.
Ms. Sutherland.
I am very concerned about our search for the new superintendent because the last one was sabotaged by some board member or board members, exposing the identity at the wrong time. I do not think that we know who it was, but it seems to be the consensus that this did happen from among the board. We should never have gone into the final meeting with only one candidate. I complained about it, but my complaint fell on deaf ears. And the most important thing we have to have is a group of people so that we can evaluate and compare them to each other and get some perspective on how it is. I'm sorry that I don't have a great answer to this because I really am very worried. I wish I could say that I had more confidence in other people to make the decision. It would make it a lot easier for me if I knew other people could be relied upon on the board, but I do not think that their capacity is any stronger than mine. And so we are truly in a difficult place. Thank you.
I think one of the most important attributes for a superintendent would be to have a really passion for students, but teaching and learning with the rich diversity that we have here in our district. And I think that has been kind of overlooked for a long time. We do have a district around this city of Fort Worth, and so we have to kind of bring that focus, and we need that superintendent to be that voice for the entire district. We don't need to be selective of certain areas of the district just to focus on. And that goes hand in hand with community building. I think our parents are hungry enough to be considered partners, and we always talk about building partnerships with parents, but do we really do it? We need someone who can be out there in the community, really working, but actually set foot in the areas to make sure that parents are heard, that the community is heard. And that's something that, to me, when it comes to the passion, we also talk about that they're not willing to accept any casualties. When I speak of casualties, those are students, those that are already ready to graduate, that at this point, hopefully they've had enough support that they are ready to go onto the next level. But if not, then we need to have someone that can build that. They need to say, we will not leave anyone, everyone will leave with something when it comes to leaving our district. And so again, to me, it's just more of the passion, and you can really tell when they're passionate about kids, about students. You know, you can call it a higher power type of thing, but you can always have that sense of energy that they bring. And so that's what I would be looking for in the next superintendent.
Mr. Cole?
Thank you. I was here that Saturday when there was a unanimous vote for the single candidate, sole candidate for superintendent. I thought that would to be kind of maybe not the best thing to do because you don't want to necessarily put all of your eggs in one basket. There certainly should have been maybe 2 or 3 candidates just in case that one particular candidate did not work out during that 21-day period of review. When brought to my attention when the sole candidate was chosen, that there was a vetting process that took place, 3 interviews that were conducted by the trustees. It would have appeared that during that 3 interview period that they would have certainly found maybe if this was the right person for that job. In my experience in the business community, being an operations manager, I had the responsibility of hiring and vetting supervisors that work for me as I provide oversight for operations of 400 to 500 people. And certainly during that interviewing process, I had to make sure we had the right persons there in those departments that fit the needs of the company that I represented. Now, the quality for the superintendent, I do believe that they need to have the experience, field experience from being a teacher to being a school administrator, all the way up through the ranks of administration. I do believe that they need to have an attitude of putting the students first, making sure that the student's success is the primary goal and objective as a superintendent. They need to be able to understand the needs of the demographic of our community. Certainly coming to a large district, much like Fort Worth ISD, that person needs to have the ability, the capability of being able to fiscally, pragmatically provide that type of leadership for a district of our size. And then also, finally, to expect the best of himself, himself or herself, and to also to expect the best of their staff as well as teachers and principals. And so with this type of attitude, with this type of drive, with this type of determination, I do believe that type of superintendent will be the very best fit for our district. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Jackson?
Thank you. The #1 attribute any superintendent has to possess in an urban district is flexibility. This job is very, very challenging, and everyone can spin you cyclonically, if that's even a word, in a vortex at any time, because there's so many different departments. Think about 12,000 employees. Think about 87,000 students. So this is someone that has to have prior urban experience. They have to have high energy, because it's hard to spin in a cyclone. They also have to rapidly and acutely assess challenges, but then formulate a longitudinal plan. That sounds like a lot of words, but the truth of the matter is, you have to acutely assess and triage every day as a superintendent, and then you have to have a long-term plan. You have to also do this in real time, so that a superintendent is looking at plans, looking at their staff, and maybe their heart's set on a plan, but it's not working. They have to have the right people around them. They have to be a team builder, and they have to end this divide that we talk about so much, about some schools that look so nice, some schools that are so supported by parents, and others that aren't as supported. We have to end that divide. Most important quality besides flexibility is putting all children first every day, and that's hard to do because there are a lot of different ways the superintendent will be pulled in the city and in the county, in the state, and nationally. So it's always children first. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. LeBeau?
I think I started off with this question, didn't I? About hiring a superintendent with a backbone that will promise to assess the administration for job performance, salary structure, to eliminate as needed, to tell the board how and when and where he'll do that. We need to hire a superintendent that not only is compassionate and loves children, but that is a businessman, that understands that this is a big business we're running here. And some days he may have to come in and put on his fireman's hat, the next day he may have to come in and put on his policeman's hat, and the next day he may have to come in and put on his accountant visor. But he's got a tremendous job ahead of him. I think one thing we could consider, I've said I'm running on bringing new ideas, is hiring a superintendent that not only has experience in education, but also an MBA. Let's see that in their curriculum vitae. Someone, if we have the Baldrige program that's here, why not hire someone with those skills? Because the Baldrige program is successful because it's a top-down program. It's not a bottom-up program. I worked at a facility with the Air Force. We won it 2 years in a row. So I'm very familiar with that system. But why not have a chief curriculum officer that is, if you will, the deputy to the superintendent? And he can assess the curriculum. He can bring in people to know how to do that. I agree with you, Mr. Aguilar, in terms of giving principals authority and skills on campus. Let them have a budgetary responsibility. Let them have a human resources responsibility. Let's give them some skills so that they are managing their campuses and not requiring. Thank you.
Okay, now we have a 2-minute closing statement from each candidate, and I think we'll start with the center. Yes. Yeah, we start with the
As I indicated somewhat earlier, there are hopeful signs that the quality of our board oversight is improving. On Tuesday, staff withdrew a proposal to merge our 2 alternative schools into one building, an action which is nearly universally predicted to be a disaster for the children who attend level learning schools. This is because the community and several board members came together and presented very strong testimony, including one person who's here tonight, indicating that the data showed that this did not work. As I said before, this is not the kind of pattern that we've had in this district. And I think it's fair to say, in my first 4 years on the board, a presentation by the superintendent was never turned down. I may be wrong about that in 1 or 2 cases, but I can't remember a single one. We know that the number one issue, I'm still talking about how the board is beginning to stir. The number one issue for most parents is the over-testing of our children. I talked earlier about how they pulled back on this short cycle assessment. That took a lot of work also by the community, including one man who collected the test with a number of answers which were clearly erroneous. I'm sorry to tell you that our staff spent a great deal of time trying to explain to this man why the answers were not wrong. But in the end, we won that issue. We're also getting artificial turf at 11 of our high schools. This happened because one of my high schools, South Hills, wanted turf. And the initial reaction was they couldn't have it. And then the board voted to say they could have it. And eventually we got it at all 11 schools. My attention to the needs of your children in your classrooms has earned me the coveted support of teachers through the UEA and the TSTA. I hope you will give me your vote in a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Aguilar.
The question that the voters have before them is, are we better off than we were 5 years ago? The answer lies within a governing body that lacks transparency and accountability at the district level. And the facts tell us no. I entered this race because of the sense of urgency that exists at many of our schools to improve the educational experience of our students. What I have learned for the past 5 years is that the conversation has gone away from teaching and learning, and that change does not happen from the top down, but rather from the bottom up. We currently operate under a fragmented organization with no sense of direction. On May 9th, voters have an opportunity in this election to maintain the status quo or help move our district forward with new ideas. Together, we can intentionally go out to our communities and engage parents to truly embody what it means to be partners in education. We can give our community schools the autonomy necessary to cultivate a positive learning environment that meets the social, emotional, and academic needs of our students. While we may have the best ideas and intentions in mind, none can be realized when we keep doing the same thing year after year, expecting different results. Every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. Our system has not gotten any better. We all need to share in the responsibility for the successes and the failures and move into a collective mode of improving our systems at all levels. The focus needs to return to teaching and learning. Let's build a better Fort Worth ISD that embraces diversity and equitable opportunities for all students. How many casualties are you willing to accept?
Thank you. Mr. Cole.
Why vote for Sultan Cole? First of all, I'm not here to represent a particular political PAC. Have not received any funding from a political action committee. I come here with the support of a community that I grew up in, a community that I was a product of, single parent home, grew up in Fort Worth ISD, moved back here to raise my children. All of my kids attend Fort Worth ISD schools. I'm here to support early childhood education by expanding universal pre-K to wherever there is a need is, the capacity of that. I'm here to support the development of effective grassroots volunteer literacy programs like the one that I developed 4 years ago called Read to Win, where we have more than 400 volunteers working with nearly 700 first grade students, teaching them, giving them the gift of reading so that they can learn to read, so they can read to learn. I'm asking for your vote because I'm here to encourage parental involvement. My mother worked graveyard shift while we stayed at home, my sister and I. She taught us the principle of hard work and getting a quality education. And in the words of George Washington Carver, he says this here: education is the key that opens the golden doors of freedom. And I'm here to provide that key for children in District 2. Also, I believe in supporting results-driven Fort Worth ISD administration. Here to promote strong fiscal oversight and with the bond executables, as well as with the budget of the district. So again, I'm asking for your support, for your vote, early voting April 27th, but also the election day of May 9th, because I'm here to represent the needs of our children, because I believe in the children, Fort Worth ISD, particularly in District 2, that they can be able to compete on a global scale, much like any other student. That's one reason why I served on the board for Young Men's Leadership Academy, and that school is doing extremely well. My son attends that school, and I believe those kids, much like the kids that I'm going to represent, who, much like myself, can perform and be successful academically, given the opportunity. Thank you again.
Thank you. Ms. Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Harrell. I'm a lifelong resident of Fort Worth. I'm proud to be an East Fort Worth resident. I still live in the house I grew up in. I still walk on the track at Eastern Hills High School that I ran track on. I still have my friends that lived in Butler housing that ran track with me, and that's why I Am Terrell is so important to me, and that's one thing I want to see through, because when I would take them home at night, I would see I Am Terrell in a state of disrepair, and so I Am Terrell means something to me, and that's a huge project we're working on, and that's going to require effective, stable, and experienced leadership. We have continuity of so many programs right now, especially in District 2. We have a care closet that we're expanding. We have Eastern Hills High School that missed by 4 points last year in Index 4. Poly that missed by 2 points in Index 4. The year before, they met state accountability. In the last 2 years, 88% of the District 2 schools have met or exceeded state accountability. That wasn't the case when I was elected. The reason this has happened is not because of me. It's because the right teams, the right teachers, the right counselors, the right bus drivers, the right custodians, the right leaders are in the right place. And I'm ready to extend this another 4 years and see what we can get done. Girls Inc. today met with United Way at Eastern Hills High School. I was there. It was an amazing meeting. To see kids that have not attended school regularly, and it's so hard with a 9th grader to get them to attend when they've had this pattern from kindergarten through 8 that they won't attend. And I saw that change today at Eastern Hills. I didn't see that 5 years ago when I was elected and that school was slated to be closed. So I'm serious about what I do. I'm so serious about it that I do this full time now. And I've committed myself to doing this, and I'm not only asking for your vote, I'm telling you I'm the best candidate in the District 2 race, and I expect to be here another 4 years because I've got work to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Lebeau?
Yes, I believe I bring integrity to this office again for District 5. I won't allow for cover-up, mismanagement of money. Sets my hair on fire. I believe that every dollar we have should go towards supporting our classroom teachers, teaching basic skills in the classroom, allowing our children to get an education and to be able to leave school, to be able to find work and not have to sing the alphabet to know that E and F are next to each other. So I feel like we need a working board. I believe I can bring the skill set into doing that. I've been responsible for hiring an executive director for a $1 billion state agency, and I believe I have skills that I want to bring. I'm going to put the servant back in public. I'm willing to be your public servant in District 5. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ms. Spear.
Thank you, Mr. Harry. As a former Fort Worth ISD parent, teacher, and chief of district operations, I'm running because I can do a better job putting our children first than our current member who has been disruptive and disrespectful. She has been unanimously censored by her fellow board members. Unlike my opponent, I will be a trustee in the true sense of the word because you can trust me to work together with colleagues, teachers, and administration to solve problems and not create controversy, to behave like a responsible adult and be a role model for our children, to respectfully work and compromise when I disagree with my colleagues. I'm Cecilia Spear, and I hope you will give me the opportunity to earn your vote. Thank you very much.
Point of personal privilege.
Okay.
I'll be brief. I was not censured unanimously. Ms. Spear's flyers are incorrect. The vote was 6, 4, and 3 did not support. I was not allowed to vote. Ashley Paz said she would refuse to vote, and the 9th person wasn't there. I resent very much bringing this up at this time, especially incorrectly. Thank you.
Mr. do you have any response to that?
According to the document that was on file. According to the document that was on file, it was a unanimous vote.
I'm sorry, but that's not true. The minutes do not show that.
Thank you. We're not going to be able to settle this at this particular point. Thank you for appearing, ladies and gentlemen. Let's give our
Tonight's forum was audio taped. We will make it available to you, the public, via our social media. Please follow us or like us on Facebook, and you'll see how we do that and be able to follow, link, and share with people that were not able to be here tonight. Remember, the early voting begins April 27 and ends on May 5th. Election day is on May 9. We are so grateful to all of our candidates for being here tonight. And thank you to Paul Harrell for moderating for us again. We very much appreciate that. And to our board for being here to make it possible. And to the ISD, Fort Worth ISD, for making this room available for all of us to be here and share this evening. On behalf of our board, of the Fort Worth ISD Council of PTAs, we appreciate your time. And if you have a choice and a chance, please support your children, your grandchildren, and your neighborhood schools by joining their PTAs, joining their boards. Anybody can be a PTA member at their local units, and we need you very much every day in those schools. Thank you, and good night.